Welcome to School of PE podcast. I'm your host, Chris Miller, and I'm so glad that you could join me this week. We are going to discuss topics about FE, PE, and SC, and we're also going to answer questions that will help students prepare for their exams. Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to School of PE's weekly podcast. This is episode number 4. Again, I'm your host, Chris Miller, and today I got a special guest with us here, Mr. Stuntz. He's a major in the U.S. Air Force. So let's please welcome him and let's spend some time getting to know him and getting to know what he does. So, Sean, it's a pleasure to meet you. This is the first time I've actually had the pleasure to meet you. First, I want to thank you for your service and also thank you for coming aboard today. So maybe if you can kind of kick off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Chris. Hi, everybody. So as you said, my name is Major Sean Stuntz. I'm an Air Force civil engineer. Originally, I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana, and I've been stationed in Florida, Ohio, Little Rock, Arkansas, deployed to Qatar, and now I'm based out of Nevada. And here with my wife and kids in Nevada. And my current job is actually an executive officer to a commander, but I've had plenty of experience in the CE and various CE civil engineering jobs. And my most recent one was an operations flight commander. And what I would like to talk about today is really talk to you about what our mission is in the Air Force. And so from the bottom up, what our job is to build, operate, and maintain air bases all around the world. Stateside, we provide reliable facilities and infrastructure that are designed to enable various Air Force missions and different kind of capabilities. And we do the same thing downrange. When a commander needs something built, we build it. So I do have several different kinds of experiences, both in the programming world, which is where we prepare advocacy and funding documents, as well as contract management. If anyone has worked with an Air Force installation, they've probably heard of a simplified acquisition of base engineering resources contract. It's an IDIQ contract. I was the OIC of a section that did that at Little Rock. And in the operations flight, we provide the repair and maintenance capabilities for the base. So anything that needs to be repaired or maintained, and as well as small construction projects, we're capable of doing those too. So a wide range of jobs for a young officer for sure.
No, absolutely. It sounds exciting. I'm excited to learn a little more about it. But you said you kind of bounced around from New Orleans to Florida to Nevada. Of those places, where are you considering home? Are you a Saints fan or a Jacksonville fan?
Yeah, I bleed black and gold, man. So I am definitely a New Orleans Saints fan. That is for sure my home. I won't let that go. I'm not a military brat. My family, I'm a first generation military, so that's definitely my home.
Oh, yeah, the only reason why I root for the Saints is because they usually have quite a few Ohio State Buckeyes on their team, so they're like the professional version of the Buckeyes. So
exactly.
Hated to see Drew Brees leave, but
absolutely.
time came for him. So I wish him last year they could have went a little bit further, but it's all right. So again, thanks for coming out and spending some time. But let me just kind of, you're actually the first military engineer that I've had the pleasure to interview. Last few times on the podcast, I've had some of our instructors on here, and they work in the civilian world. So what are some of the differences that you can talk about between a civilian engineer and being an engineer for the Air Force?
So I really don't have a whole lot of friends or a whole lot of extensive network in the industry, but what I've gathered is that when you enter into the workforce as a civil engineer in the industry, you kind of start out as a project engineer, and the idea is to work up to become a project manager, and then kind of take on different roles and responsibilities, or increasing levels of responsibility throughout your career. And that mentality is very similar to an Air Force officer. I'd say that the one major difference that is probably notable on the surface is that we're not necessarily thrown into a design section or a design cell immediately. Pretty early on in our career, we're actually thrown into the typical job it's referred to as a programming officer. But the term programming can lose its meaning as soon as you walk out of a CE squadron. And the idea here is that we're helping the squadron and the base advocate for funds to Congress. And so that requires us to kind of dig into the requirement, understand its impact to the mission and to the base at large, and to be able to help our leaders communicate that in a way that is going to make it attractive for Congress to go ahead and fund. And then from there, it's all about, again, increasing scopes and levels of responsibility. notably the difference being, again, it's the technical depth, and it's not like we're deprived of it completely, but I would say the emphasis is on honing your leadership skills and managing teams that increase in size throughout your career. They start small, and then as you progress, you end up being a squadron commander or over some larger staff at a later date in your career.
Sounds great. So, kind of question for you. So, when you decided to go in the Air Force, did you have your plan ahead of you? Like, did you already know you wanted to go into engineering, or did you discover that after you were already in the Air Force? Came first?
So, I would consider my career the product of really of mentors that have kind of helped guide me along the way. I'll be completely honest. When I first applied to the Air Force Academy, I had no idea if it would even work out, let alone get into it and then be here today. What I really wanted to do, at least when I signed those papers on my acceptance letter, was to fly planes. And within about the first year, I kind of realized that there was just a whole different world to the Air Force. I had no idea what it was about. And so I had to branch out quite a bit. And there's several ways at the Air Force Academy where they kind of expose you to different career fields. But it was when I saw the guys who were wearing the red caps, and I got to hear their story and what they do and what they support, that I just knew it immediately clicked with me. So coming from New Orleans, and after seeing the impact of Hurricane Katrina, and only briefly, and not with any kind of engineering technical depth, did I do my own little homework and figure out kind of what went wrong infrastructure wise. Did I realize that engineers and scientists and people in the STEM community really have the ability to impact people's lives? And so I found a really interesting kind of nexus for those two things that I was really driving towards: the science and math career field, plus the opportunity to build and do cool engineering projects. And for me, the natural fit for that was the Air Force civil engineering community.
That sounds great. One of the great things about engineering is, every day can be different. There's so many different paths you can go. You could be transportation engineer working on, roads, traffic signals. Then you have the, construction, building or structure. So it's, definitely a lot of different paths that you can take. And then I'm imagining that, every day in the Air Force might be a little bit different than what, we would have in the civilian world. But maybe talk about what your average day or typical day is like.
Sure. It changes from base to base. Different commanders have their kind of different tempos and everything, but I'd say a pretty standard expectation is, at least for me, is to be up early in the gym, at least 4 days a week. That's a 4 a.m. showtime. Typically, we'll do PT 2, maybe 3 times a week. That'll start at 6 o'clock. And my personal philosophy is that you need more than calisthenics and a running program to stay in, at least a healthy shape. So,
right.
I supplement that. But 6 o'clock showtime for that. We probably go to like 7 or 7:30, 8 o'clock when we start rolling back in the office. And a typical day probably involves at least 1 or 2 status updates, whether I'm getting them from my teams or I'm providing them up the chain. And I would say that what I try to do, my personal philosophy, is to crush my email in the morning and enjoy lunch with my peers or my team, and then get away from the desk in the afternoon. Usually there's nothing so hot or pressing that's coming down an email at 1 or 2 in the afternoon that I need to jump through hoops to get to it. And that's just one of the leadership tidbits that I've picked up on that seems to be pretty effective. It helps you get out and see the job sites and everything like that, and really connect with your troops. But after that, we've closed out pretty regularly between 4 and 5. And then it's family time. Family time after that. We get the kids down, and then it's really it's at night. Night's the only time I really get an opportunity to focus on any kind of professional development or educational stuff that I'm working on. And fortunately, the Air Force offers us a lot of opportunity to do that. Especially after hours. So, yep, that's pretty much it.
No, it sounds like a lot of stuff in one day for sure.
Oh yeah.
I get up at 4 myself and hit the gym, but I don't have 6 o'clock PT after as well. So I can imagine how long of a day that is. But it's always good to find some time for family. Looks like I can see behind you got a couple of kids there.
That's right.
How old are they?
So I've got a 5-year-old girl. Her name is Riley, and a soon-to-be 3-year-old boy, Cole, and my wife's name is Corey.
Oh, so she's probably the project manager of the house, I'd assume.
Absolutely, and I am the worker bee for sure.
Got your handfuls with some young ones.
That's right.
So what's it like living in Nevada and being in the Air Force?
So being in Nevada, Nevada is an interesting beast. The weather is pretty standard.
Mhm.
It's like clear skies throughout the year, but there's like a torrential downpour month and between anytime, and it can happen between August and November, anytime in there, and you're guaranteed to have like a 1 month torrential downpour where you're just fighting the rain. But anyway, but other than that, no, this has been a great assignment for a family. It's actually pretty flexible. I mean, yes, you have the downtown Las Vegas area, which we don't frequent very often, but
Sure.
there's tons of stuff to do as a family out here. And to be engaged in a really eager spouses community for other military affiliated individuals that get together and support each other when we need to.
Sounds great. I've been out to Nevada usually just for Vegas, but like you said, some great outlying communities there, great hiking out there. So, I imagine there's some great opportunity for a family to do some outdoor stuff, which is great.
Yeah.
Weather's a little strange Nevada can be because most people just assume it's hot all the time, but
Right.
I've been there when it's snowing in Vegas, and I'm like, what the heck is this coming out of the sky?
Yeah, it's unreal. It's unreal. But you never really get used to the heat. You can be outside for an hour and then you're done, and that's it. So.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it could be midnight and still 90 some degrees. What cracks me up is, I'm from Southern California, so I'm used to a little bit of heat, but I moved out to Ohio and you get this humidity and it's like, holy cow, it's 98 degrees, 98% humidity. And people are like, well, you're lucky it was dry heat back home. I'm like, 100 degrees is 100 degrees. I don't care if it's hot or hot. It's funny, like we're living on the West Coast, people don't really talk about, if it was humid, it was this. But out here in Ohio, they're like, oh man, you don't have to deal with the humidity. But I'm like, I'd rather have some of this than that 100-degree dry heat.
No, I'm with you. Coming from New Orleans, I'm the same way.
oh yeah, a lot of humidity out there. And then even Florida, you've had quite a bit of it. So this might be your driest climate.
Yeah, it's my driest climate. I don't know. I'm still torn, honestly. The humidity heat or whatever. But to me, I'm with you. It's just heat.
I agree. So when you're done stationed in Nevada, where's your next move, or do you not know yet?
So I do know. I'm actually headed to Osan Air Base in Korea. So I'll be on the 7th Air Force CE staff out there, and looking forward to working with those guys. So I'll be getting out of the squadron, so it's just a little bit different experience, but I won't be working necessarily with teams of guys that are building project packages and submitting things for approval or to hire headquarters or anything. I'll be one of those the staff weenies, if you will, that are helping get all those things kind of organized for those guys at different bases.
That's really cool. As I mentioned earlier, engineering has its own paths, a lot of different paths you can take, but then you combine that with the, options or opportunities that the military gives you working overseas. I mean, that's a lot of different opportunity that we get, for a civilian engineer. So that's pretty cool. How long is your station going to be over in Korea?
It should be 2 years. I should be bringing my family out. I expect to bring them out. And so it'll be a good 2-year assignment. Hopefully we stay overseas afterwards. There's a ton of jobs that we can do.
Right.
After that, I'd love to see Europe. There's plenty of different staff opportunities out there. And even in Japan, just great opportunities to bring the family and see the world. So that's the dream, man.
Absolutely. I mean, when we were growing up, my dad was stationed in Yokota Air Base over in Tokyo. So, I mean, it's a great way for a kid to grow up, experiencing the cultures of a foreign country. It's pretty cool. And then, living on the base, so at least you're still surrounded by, people that are from the States. So at least you have that close bond. And then yet, you travel off the base and, you're amongst the natives that are living there. So it's a pretty cool experience. And, it's great for kids growing up. It's something, I'll never forget for sure. I got a question for you, though. So, I'm sure that you're a great planner. You put your ducks in a row. But if I could ask you, what's that one curveball about engineering that kind of threw you for a loop or kind of was a surprise for you? What would that be?
When I first got into the Air Force, and you think you have it all figured out because you just spent 4 years with your head in the books and you're just super eager to get out there and lead a team. And I think the most surprising thing for me about the engineering community in general was that leading an engineering team is a little bit more challenging than you'd think. It doesn't. I mean, I would say that the biggest form of growth that I've exhibited, and just having an opportunity to reflect on the way I was when I came into the Air Force and where I'm at now, is that oftentimes I can just provide the idea, provide the end goal to a team of really motivated individuals, and really I can watch them work. And so that changes the role of a leader, and in my mind, as one of being the person who's going to itemize the list, set objectives, make goals for the team, and do status check, check in on statuses and provide guidance all the time. To now, I am just really providing inputs as they need me. I'm providing them the resources that they need to get the job done, and I'm kind of more of a hands-off servant leader type. So that was a big shift for me, a big change in my maturity and my development and how I thought of engineering leadership. But I'd say that more often than not, the thing that surprised me most was just how much ownership those team members take about every single piece of that thing that's theirs. And I think that the most important role that an engineering leader plays in that sense is just in making sure that people are communicating on the team effectively and assisting your team however they need.
Fantastic. So, I had the pleasure almost every day talking to, engineers that are either preparing for the FE exam or preparing for the PE exam. And listening to their stories is great, kind of seeing, listening to how they plan on preparing for the exam, or, what their, I guess, everyday duties entail, to kind of how they can find time to study and prepare for the PE. Being in the military, how was it to find time to study and prepare for the exam? Was it like, hey, they gave you a test job for 8 months for you to prepare?
Man. So I think that's a great question, because the Air Force has very demanding. I will say that the work schedule, the work-life balance opportunities, or really the work-life balance for an officer is pretty fast-paced. You're expected to perform at work, and there's a lot of things that are put on your plate. And it would be very, I would say, detrimental to the teams that you're tasked with leading if you need to carve out 2 or 3 hours of study time to a day to get ready for the PE or the FE, what have you. For my personal study style or learning style, the only way that I was going to learn and be ready for the PE kind of lined up with how the School of PE offered their material. I need a lot of material, I need a lot of problems, and I need a lot of feedback. And so even carving out 1 hour a day wasn't going to cut it for me. I really, really needed to dive into the material and study. And the only opportunity that I had for that, man, was for between the hours of 9 p.m. and midnight. So in my personal circumstance, that guy was brand new to the world.
Right.
And I had decided when he was about 6 months old that I'm like, okay, well, it's now or never. I've got to do this. And so, for about 3 hours a day, 6 days a week after work, that's what it took for me to commit to the program of study that I needed to pass the PE exam. So it's not that the Air Force wouldn't give me the time, but even if they gave me an hour or two during the day, it's not like I would have really benefited from it, because I really needed the focused time at night. And there's no way you're going to fight off the flood of phone calls and emails and problems from your team that you got to help solve if you're really going to be dedicated and to your studies at least. So yeah, that was an experience.
I can imagine. At least you only had to go through, once you pass, you're done. Move on to the next.
That mentality got me through this. I just said, look, I just need to put everything I've got into this one test, this one time, and pass. And I screamed at the top of my lungs when I checked my NCES account and saw that I passed. So I will never forget that feeling.
No, that's a great story. And it's also great for people that are, listening, that, they don't have time to study. Let's say I have an 8 to 5 job. That's great. But, not only did you have an 8 to 5 job, if it was even 8 to 5, you're in the military, you have a family, so you were still able to carve out the time that was needed to prepare. So that, that gives hope to everybody that's like, I don't got the time to do it.
Yeah, you've honestly got to dig deep. And one of the things that I've learned is that there's nothing that's given to you, and no one succeeds alone. So I needed help to get through things. There were some, powered systems questions that I had. There were some structures questions that I had that I reached out to the instructors and got help and got feedback on, and they were very receptive. But I had my own community that kind of helped me along too. So you've got to do what you have to do to pass. I just dig deep for that one moment.
Well, that's great, and encourages a lot of people that they can do the same thing under the same circumstances. Let's pretend that you're invited to a high school today to talk to the graduating seniors,
Yeah.
and a young kid walks up to you and says, "Major, I got a question for you. I'm thinking of becoming an engineer, but I don't know if I want to go into the military and do it, or I'm just going to, go straight into college."
Yeah.
What would you do? What kind of advice would you give someone that's thinking of not only joining the military, but they want to go the engineering route?
The decision to join the military is a very personal one. And I think that you first need to kind of align yourselves with the values that are espoused in the military. The Air Force, it's integrity, service, and excellence. And obviously, you can't be a good engineer if you don't have a good foundation there. And so, but if you're even interested in joining the military, first thing that I can personally attest to is that if you find the right mentor, and these can be for a young person, the junior ROTC commanders, the deck commanders that they have at their high school, or friends and relatives that they have or in the military, or even me, if they're watching this, I'll provide you my email or contact info to figure out what a day in the life is like. But really, it comes down to a commitment to serve and uphold the values that are espoused in the Constitution of the United States. And not to get all high-hatted here, but I really do. I believe in that document and that and those ideas, and those really provide the foundation for why I wake up and put on a uniform every single day. When it comes to being an engineer, I would say if you love solving problems, if you love being thrown in the mix of things, and if you love being challenged every single day, I would say that an engineering career field is probably not something that you should shy away from. I think you should entertain the idea. One of the things that I've had to adapt to, again, harkening back to when I was a 22-year-old, when I knew everything, there were several times where I had to kind of separate myself from a situation and just do a humility check and just be like, you know what? This guy who is younger than me, who has less education than I do, he knows the right answer, and I can trust him. And it took me several times, feedback that I'm giving myself and feedback that I'm getting from everyone else, understanding that feedback and utilizing it, and just saying, look, I can step away from this and let my people kind of run with this idea. So I will say that if you love solving problems, engineering's probably up your alley. But if you need to come into that with the expectation that you're going to be humbled on an almost daily basis, especially as a young engineer, and that's okay. If there's anything that I hope a young or aspiring engineer takes away from this podcast, it's that it's okay to get things wrong in the context where you have someone to provide you feedback and learn from your mistakes. If you are, I just recently spoke with a retired Chief Master Sergeant over lunch, and he said something that has now, obviously it's these discussions that completely change your outlook on life. But he said something that I'll never forget. He said, show me a leader that isn't failing, and I'll show you a leader that isn't trying. Right. And it struck a chord with me. I was like, that's 100% right. And so if I could communicate that to a young person, it's that don't be afraid to challenge yourself and to take risks. Failure is a part of life, and failure is one of those things that you kind of have to embrace if you really want to be good at something. So when you submit that, homework assignment or that paper in college and you get a 60 or a 70 on it, it's not the teacher saying that you're a failure. It's the teacher saying that, hey, look, you've got room to grow. And if you just shift your perspective and how you kind of take that feedback and you become more coachable, I think that you stand to benefit in the long run. That's a lot of words to say to a very young person who probably doesn't have the attention span to listen to it. But I think that if someone wants to solve problems and they're coachable, I'd say that the engineering career field is right up their alley.
That's some wise words to live by, for sure. So I appreciate you sharing that. So
Sure.
On the flip side, so I mean, you're right. Failure is a part of life. It's about getting back up off the ground and moving forward. So what would you tell someone that just took the PE and they didn't pass the PE, and they're like, they're hanging their head down, and they come to you looking for maybe a little motivation to help get them off the ground? What are you gonna tell them?
So I go to the gym and I lift to fail, right? I train myself to fail. And in doing that, you build up a mental capacity to deal with that. And that's not just saying that the gym is the only answer and the only
Right.
comparison. Elon Musk just tweeted out, well, our SN-15 just landed, and that's pretty cool because we have no idea how to get this spacecraft off of the launch pad. So Elon Musk has built an industry that's based on failing and getting feedback and building better, right? So I would say to the person that failed the PE, it sucks. There's no
Right.
way around it. You spent countless hours preparing for this. You had to wait for this decision to come down. And now you're just kind of figuring out how to put together a strategy to help you do it. And again, the only piece of advice that I would offer to anyone is that you've got to keep fighting for this thing. If it's something that you want better, if there's nothing that's going to slow you down, the only thing that's stopping you is frankly you and the amount of effort that you want to put into it. And I don't. I would love to think that I had the moral fortitude to have these ideas and that all of these are 100% original. And I promise you that they're not. They're coming from someone who has failed, who has struggled, even coming out of the academy. Look, I graduated in the top 10% of the bottom half of my class, and that's okay. And I say that not afraid of failure because I've achieved 2 master's degrees after the fact, and I've worked really hard to earn my PE. And I have an opportunity to interact and learn from a lot of people who are very driven individuals and who have succeeded. A lot of whom are my supervisors and fellow commanders. And the bottom line is that it's about individual effort. The PE is not going to be given to you. You got to work for it. You got to study for it. And I remember feeling physically ill after a night of studying, probably about 2 weeks before my test. And I had to tell myself, stop studying. Like, just let it go. Stop
Right.
studying. I don't know if it was the Jersey Mike sub that I had beforehand, or if it was just because I'd been studying it ended up, I forget what the number of hours, but it was no kidding in the hundreds of hours that I poured into this thing. And it takes a toll. It's mentally draining. It's physically exhausting, and you've got to push yourself through it to achieve it. So don't stop is the only advice I can give to anybody, and no one's going to give it to you.
Yeah, absolutely right. No, great words to live by. Great advice. You're right. The only thing stopping you is yourself. Because you're right. Everyone's going to fail. It's how you react after
Absolutely.
failing what defines you. Earlier you mentioned that you attended the Air Force Academy, and you wanted to fly planes, fighter planes, more specifically.
Yeah.
And then you said, oh, after that you decided that you wanted to, go the engineering route. So what made? Did you have some mentors at the academy that maybe flying's not for you?
Yeah. So there's a glider program that you can take after your freshman year, and I flew gliders. I actually did pretty well, and I loved it. It was peaceful. It was serene. It was also hectic because as you're making calls to land, like you've got to get it right. And I loved every bit of it. I knew in that moment that I was going to fly planes for the rest of my life, and that was it. And then I met guys who were in Red Horse. And for anyone who isn't familiar with the Air Force Rapid Engineer Deployable Heavy Operational Repair Squadron Engineer, which is the acronym that Red Horse stands for.
Wow.
It's a forced acronym. It doesn't mean anything. There's a lot of history associated with it, but for engineering practical purposes, just think heavy construction, horizontal construction is their focus. And when I saw these guys, and I heard their stories about deploying during Desert Storm, I was just like, man, that sounds awesome. How do I get a dose of that? Well, sure enough, at the academy, I had an opportunity to do a field engineering research lab that basically got us exposed to all the different assets and all the different functions in the civil engineering squadron to include heavy construction. And I thought I loved planes, but I liked building stuff way better. And the satisfaction that comes along with being in a leadership position that that helps enable the enterprise that is the Air Force, and for us to be able to do all the amazing things that we do, I just truly fell in love with it, and I knew that it was what I wanted to do.
That's incredible. That's a great story. I'm hoping, though, before you decide to give up the wings and go, more on the ground level, were you at least able to get into a cockpit of an F-15? Or those might not even be around anymore. I'm not sure. I'm trying to date myself.
No. F-15s, man, those things are a beast. They're still flying. So I have flown in the back of an F-16, but it was after my decision to be a civil engineer. Unfortunately, no. Before I made that decision, I didn't have the opportunity to get an incentive ride, is what they refer to it as, or anything like that. But I'll say I had mentors that exposed a different world to me, and I didn't really have anyone pushing me one way or the other. They just said, here's this option, here's this option. Here are the things that are downstream of choosing either of those, and it's really, again, it's up to you. And I could have easily just written down on a piece of paper that I wanted to be a pilot, and I would have likely gotten a pilot slot. My eyes are 20/20, and I could have done it. So, but I don't, and looking back, I don't think there was ever a single moment where I said, for sure, I know that this is a 100% right decision. I mean, yeah, I was in love with the civil engineering once I came across it, but to think that I'd be so lucky to have this completely perfect, clear picture about what I want to do is kind of not the truth, right? So you do have to take a chance, right? There is a chance that you're going to be dissatisfied at some point. And that's not to say that the entire civil engineering experience has been unicorns and rainbows. I mean, there's plenty of stuff that I wish was different, and plenty of things that can be improved upon in any organization or community. But this is so far has been worth every bit of the ride. So
no, that's great. So let's say you're walking out on a sunny Nevada day. You look up in the sky, and above you flies over a squadron of fighter planes. Yeah. Any regrets that you're not up there flying, or
any regrets at all? There is a piece of me that always wonders what that's like. And after having had the opportunity to sit in the back of an F-16 and really see what they did, I will say that it is a physical workout. It is very demanding on the body. And when I was done with the ride, I had my helmet on and my face mask on, and the maintainer, as we're pulling into park, the F-16 is busting out laughing. I don't know why, but he can see the physical exhaustion from my face just by being able to view here. So, I look up at it, and I see those Thunderbirds flying. Sometimes they'll do a show out here in Vegas, but I mean, maybe there's a little bit, but I still think back to the fact that at the end of the day, I helped enable that, right? Those guys wouldn't be able to take off if we didn't prepare the runway or maintain the runway. Absolutely, or maintain the back shops that helped keep the plane safe. So we take a lot of pride in seeing those aircraft launch and land. And so while there may be a little bit of jealousy that those guys probably have a little bit more fun, and they probably check email a little less frequently than I do. And that's probably where most of my jealousy lies. But for the most part, no, I don't regret the decision at all to be a civil engineer. But to say that the feeling is completely gone, that would also be untrue, I guess.
Maybe they'll let you get in the back seat of another one of these days so you can experience that.
That's it.
So if I were to job shadow you for a day, what is my day going to be like?
Yeah.
I were to say, Major Stuntz, I want to follow you for the day. Show me what you got. Cool. What are we doing?
So our operations flight is a very unique beast. It's made up of a lot of contractors, made up of some civilians and military personnel as well. And so if you follow me for a day, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to get a status update on our ongoing construction projects. These are the big high dollar things that we want to do in-house, but we're not shopping out to be contracted out, right? So this is just in-house organic labor that we're using to do this. And so I've got my foremen that are providing me those inputs, and we're just tracking the status updates. And then from there, we're rolling into the GIs, and we're talking to those that are our military personnel. If I use an acronym that we don't understand, please stop me. Switch that I can't switch off. But we talk with our military guys, and what we're laser focused on for those guys is asset management, which has become almost a buzzword, but it's a seriously important thing that the Air Force is actually tied into their financing of FSRM funds for installations. And so getting ground truth data, actionable data on how we repair and maintain our installations according to the priorities that are important and set for that installation I mean, that idea is how we're trying to shape the the operations flight. And so we would talk to those guys. We would see what was going on, and then from then on out, it's mostly site visits and stopping by the different shops in the flight, and just checking in, making FaceTime, and seeing how those guys are doing. There's pretty regular updates to our squadron commander, and I think what one thing that you would probably take away is that my job as the flight commander is to lead change, and that's really any officer's responsibility when they're in charge of an organization, is to lead meaningful change and to provide the resources to their people so that they can do their mission, right? And so you kind of, when you're in that seat, you have to gauge what is the degree of change that I want to go after. What's the most meaningful thing that's relevant to our base and to our commander's priorities, and how do we get after that? And so we would spend a good long time kind of focusing on that. And I would say that the taking on asset management and the complexities that are really associated with doing that right has driven a lot of, I'll say, opportunity to lead that change. And along with that, the struggles that you can frankly imagine from, digging up whatever pipelines from, decades ago that are just frankly undocumented. So, so.
Sounds like it'd be a full day for sure.
It's a full day.
Come 5 p.m., I'm probably ready to call it quits.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I know I am mentally exhausted and physically exhausted at the end of every day. That's the goal.
Well, I can imagine. Well, hey, Major Stuntz, it's been a pleasure talking today. I'd love to have you back. I mean, I'm sure you have so many great stories that you could share. I'd love to hear about your time at the Air Force Academy, and maybe some of the technologies that are coming out, ever changing every day. So it'd be kind of interesting to see how those are implemented and used in the military for engineering. But yeah, I'd love to have you back again. It's been a pleasure, and again, thank you so much for your service. Truly appreciate what you do for us. And until the next time, we'll see you then. Have a great day.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, Sean, we cut it off. Hey, I appreciate it, man. That was good. I had a great time. I tell you, I seriously could just talk to you all day about this, man. It's good stuff.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I was a little nervous to start, but man, you got a real knack for getting me settled in. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it.
Teamwork.
No, and true. I mean, you are. You're young for a major.
I just hit my 10-year point, man. I actually started growing out my hair so people could see the gray, so they stopped saying that. So please, don't tell anyone. I started cutting mine
to get rid of it. So, holy cow! What are your master's degrees in?
So I got one in industrial engineering in my first 2 years. So the other story is that I was in a different career field from my first 2 years. I was doing testing, and they emphasized industrial engineering, and I wasn't sure if I'd even be able to be a civil engineer. So I got that one. And then I got a graduate of engineering management through AFIT, which I love, and that place is awesome. So those are the two.
That's cool. Thanks for spending some time with me today, and we'll chat again soon, huh?
Sounds good, Chris. Thanks a lot.
Have a great day.
Same to you.